Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kinetic Rugby League channel. This is my Rugby League Ashes Game 3 predictions video. I was correct with Australia winning Game 1 and Game 2, as were basically most people on this planet, to be honest. But I'm going to give you my Game 3 predictions. As always, let me know yours in the comment section down below, but let's get on with the game for this week. So there are a few notes, positive notes that I want to get onto for England first. I know it's not been a great series for us, but a few positives from Game 1 to Game 2. Now, the first half was solid. We can all agree it was pretty solid. We were in the game. It was 4-4 at half-time. We looked pretty good. We had some good possession. Second half was boring. It was not good, which I'll get onto. But some improvements to at least consider from Game 1 to Game 2. Possession was in favour of Australia in Game 1. It was in favour of England in Game 2. Completion rate for England was improved. Post-contact metres for England was also improved. Australia's line breaks went from 9 down to 2 between Game 1 and Game 2, so major improvements there. England had more tackle breaks this week as well. Average set distance was still won by Australia again. England's average set distance was improved by 2 metres per set, but Australia's were down by 9. So that difference, I think, was 3 metres in terms of the difference in terms of average set distance. So much better from England this week in terms of restricting metres for Australia. Tackle efficiency was up as well, but two of the main issues which I wanted England to clean up were errors and penalties. There were more from England in Game 2 than compared to Game 1, but still plenty of other areas where England were actually improved in the second game. But if we move on to changes for Game 3, this one's a bit of a tricky one. I'm slightly confident in how I think the changes might go, because Australia, now they've wrapped up the series, they've got complete and utter freedom to go with whatever they want. And Kevin Walters can be really creative or can just be very different, throw a random side out there, at least for the spine anyway. They can have a brand new spine. Brand new. They've stuck with the same one, which I think has been completely fair, of Walsh, Munster, Cleary and Grant, which on paper is the best in the world, in my opinion, and for the opinion of most people as well, I think. But they could still go with Edwards at 1, Strange at 6, Moses at 7 and Brayley at 9. For a brand new spine, and it's still better than each option for England. Regardless of whatever combination you go with, Australia still beat us in the spine. So they could get creative, they could be a little bit different, they could start guys in the front row that don't normally start, so Keane Kalamatangi, Lindsay Smith, they might get starts this time in the front row, we'll see. I believe Isaiah Yeo would be available as well after the HIA protocols from Game 2, so he might be back in the side too. Changes for England, a couple of the changes I mentioned in the last video, they did happen. So Brimson came in for Wellesby. Smith came in to replace Mikey Lewis at 7. I assumed it would be Smith and Williams. That's what I kind of wanted from the start. And then Trout was actually 18th man. I wanted him to start because I think his carries off the bench were great in Game 1. I don't know why he wasn't in the squad for this one. Watkins, I think, was okay, but I just would have preferred Trout in there. Not that he would have made a sweeping change or sweeping difference and would have been the difference maker, but I just think he would have been a little bit stronger for carries. That's my opinion. But Burgess will likely come in for Dom Young. He went off injured in the last 5 minutes in Game 2. I don't know what the injury was for Dom Young, but I assume that Burgess will get some game time anyway. John Stone goes back to his preferred side on the right. Burgess will be over on the left. So that's something, I guess. Little bit of change in the back line is going to make all the difference, surely. I do get the feeling that Williams will be dropped, and then it'll be Lewis and Smith in the halves. Lewis would likely be playing over on the right-hand side, and as a left-footed player, he'd likely then be off the kicking, because you'd let Smith just do some of that. Some of his kicking in Game 2 wasn't great. Some of them were a bit skewed, but I think it'll be Smith doing the kicking over on the left-hand side of the field, because a lot of that inside pressure for Mikey Lewis on the right is going to be tough to get those kicks away. If he's just kicking from 40 metres out towards the short side, that's probably fine. The inside pressure is not going to be that much of an issue, but I assume Lewis and Smith might be the combination, with Brimson staying at 1, and then I think Clark will be 9, Lytton 14 off the bench. That's my assumption for changes in Game 2. But looking at the performance from England in Game 2, especially in the second half, it did happen a lot in the first. Just very simple block shape after block shape after block shape. You can see there's plenty of depth, and from the angle that I was sat in the stadium, when we were inside the red zone, there was plenty of depth. But the problem is, the ball from the hooker to the first receiver might be a little bit wayward. from Litton to Williams or to Smith. But then the ball from Smith or Williams out the back was slightly wayward, and you've got players having to like stop to make sure they don't go too far ahead of the ball. They're stumbling to receive it. It's just not clean enough, not cohesive enough. So there's plenty of depth, but we're not able to challenge towards the edges because the first few passes are just not clean enough. Whereas with Australia, I don't think they were that fast moving the ball around. They were less adventurous in game 2, but the difference between Australia and England that we've seen in both games so far is just how clean they've been moving the ball around. It's been quite simple stuff from Australia, but they're just a lot cleaner. And if it's cleaner, they can play faster. Because if we try and increase the speed, but we're not executing well enough, the ball's just going to go out the back every single time. And you do not want guys like Josh Addo-Carr jamming out the line when there's a wayward ball to pick it up and start sprinting. Don't care how fast Dominic Young is. You get Addo-Carr in a bit of momentum, that's going to be a tough guy to stop in a 100-metre sprint. So we've just not been clean enough in possession. I think we can all agree that Australia haven't been great. They've not been amazing. England have just been really, really poor. That's not to say that Australia haven't earned these wins or done good stuff, because they absolutely have. But we know that there's so much more room for growth in this Australia side. And I think one thing that might benefit Australia this week is like the shackles being off, or whatever term you want to use. Like, they've wrapped up the series. There's maybe a bit of freedom to try something new, maybe with a difference in personnel. But even if it's the same, maybe less stress or less restriction on, here's a game plan, and why don't we just start chucking the ball around? Let's have a bit of fun. Let's get creative. Try something a little bit different. Chipping the ball over the top inside the midfield. Sometimes what we've seen from George Williams, like in that first game early on to Herbie Farnworth, things like that a little bit more consistently from Australia. They've been just sticking with the basics, making sure that they win the battle through the middle, kick to the corners, and restrict the meters. I think they've done a good job in both games to at least keep one winger for England trapped into the corners. In game 1, it was Johnstone. In game 2, it was Dom Young. I think Young had 10 kick return meters. Looking at the stats on the NRL website, it was 10 return meters. And for Johnstone, I think it was quite limited in comparison to Young in game 1. So Australia were focusing on the basics, but I think they'll have a lot more freedom this week. Whereas with England, I think Sean Wayne's going to be hammering into them about sticking with the process, being physical, getting into the grind, and making sure that we complete at a high rate, finish sets a lot more cleanly. I think we did finish sets a little bit more cleanly in game 2 compared to game 1. Just some of the kicks and the placement from Smith wasn't great on some of those ends of sets. But I think England will still be a little bit more restrictive, whereas Australia will throw the ball around a little bit more. It will have its pros in that I think they will stun England's defence a bit more because they're less rigid, but I think it will come with more mistakes because they are trying to throw the ball around more. So they could turn over the ball a little bit more, give England some decent territory inside the midfield. That's just an idea of how I think the game might go. So in terms of actual points, how I think the game's going to go, for tries, points, all that good stuff, I do think England will finally get a first half try. I think if you look at the start from England, good territory, a lot of possession inside the red zone, applying a lot of pressure on Australia's goal line. Some of it was gifted due to penalties or 6-agains, but a lot of it was earned as well from England. Good stuff, strong in the grind, restricting Australia's meters enough, being able to get up the field enough as well. There were a lot of penalties, as I said, but England earned a lot of that territory as well. I think England will get a lot of good territory inside the red zone. I think this week, regardless of whatever combination we have in the spine, that we will play with more energy, a bit more pace, and at least be a little bit more cohesive. And if there are changes to Australia's spine, the 3 in defender will be a little bit different, possibly a bit rusty. You could go with Ethan Strange, Mitchell Moses. They're still solid defenders, but maybe in terms of communication and cohesion in the defensive line, it would be off slightly. And if they make more changes, it could be even more off. So there's something, but again, it's just guesswork. It is a predictions video after all. But I think there'll be a first half try in there. Just England will have more energy than game 1 and even game 2, applying more pressure and come up with something in the end. I do think Australia by the end of the first half will probably retake a lead. First of all, they'll be able to find some points, because if we start piling on points or putting any points on, they'll start coming back at us with something. I think with the amount of penalties we've been giving away as well inside good territory, they'll likely take a 2 and then take a 2-point lead before half time, or even score again before the half's done. We've got to make sure that we've got full concentration for that half and not give away anything stupid right at the back end like we have done. And then in the second half, I feel like, can we be a little bit different? I think yes. I think we will be able to at least look professional enough in the second half, restricting meters. I've not been a huge fan of some of the decision-making for personnel from Sean Wayne, but I think by game 3 you'll have a much better idea of what team would best compete over 80 minutes. And I think the lads will want to put in a good 80-minute shift in Leeds, in the heartlands of Rugby League, at home, to at least come up with something, stay in the grind for longer, be a little bit more professional, stop giving away penalties, and restrict Australia a bit more. Maybe find a second half try as well. But I still think Australia will have too much over the course of 80 minutes with the way that they can kick to the corners and suffocate, and over like average set distance, which they've won twice now. Yes, it was improved for England in the second week, but over the course of 80 minutes, that'll just add up. And it'll be individuals like Munster or Cleary, Moses, Strange, doesn't matter who you put in that spine, those individuals will come up with something and change the game. The guys on the edges, whether it be Young or Crichton, Kalamatangi, doesn't matter who it is, they'll come up with something. And I think it'll just result in just more tries for Australia. So I'm actually going to go with the same predicted scoreline from last week to this one. So I'm going to go with England 12, Australia 24. So there you have my Rugby League Ashes Game 3 predictions. If you guys have your own, please do let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, if you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. And if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the link in the description down below. That's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.